Standing and face the clerk.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the evidence given to the court and jury in the case now and hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Sir.
Thank you. You can take a seat.
Sir, could you pull the microphone down a little bit closer to you, please?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
So my name is Timothy Nuttall. I'm 28 years old. I've been a firefighter paramedic ever since I graduated high school. I graduated in 2015. I took my EMT class and got my certification while I was actually still in high school. From there, I moved on to the BLS transfer side of EMS. There's 911 EMS, and then there's transfer, which is basically back and forth from hospital to hospital. I was brand new and very young, so I started on the transfer side, kind of learning the job. I started primarily in the city of Chelsea, Everett, Malden, Somerville, up there. And then after a little while, I got my feet wet in the 911 side. So I was running BLS 911 in those cities as well. And then I progressed on to become a paramedic. So
Why do you have such an interest in being a first responder at a young age?
I kind of grew up in a first responder household. My father was a firefighter in a local town, so we spent kind of a significant amount of time at the station when he was on shift. It's just kind of how I grew up, kind of learning the ins and outs of public safety. That's just kind of how I came to be interested in the profession, and then I took it from there. So
I want to take us back just a little bit. When you first became interested in training to be a first responder, did you share with us your first training was as an EMT?
Yes, sir.
Can you share a little bit with the jury what that entails?
So to become an EMT, there are two sides of EMS, and then there are two sides of providers. There's EMT basic, and then there's paramedic. To answer your question, sir, to start as an EMT, it's about a 4-month process. You take classes. I believe mine was Tuesday, Thursday, every other Saturday. Learning just anatomy and physiology, basic pharmacology, and kind of how medications interact with the body and different disease processes. From there, you start learning basic interventions, backboarding, C-collars.
As part of your work in learning to be an EMT, are you active in the field?
The initial training is, that's mostly classroom-based, but once you sit your national written tests and you're able to pass all that and pass practical, then you're able to progress into the field.
And did you succeed through the EMT training?
Yes, sir.
At that point, did you decide you wanted more training? You wanted to proceed through the profession?
Yes, sir. So after a little while, I worked for about 1.5 years in the field and decided that I genuinely enjoyed the work that I was doing. I then made the decision to progress to the paramedic level. That's a significantly more challenging academic portion. And
can you briefly share with us a little bit of the training that you needed to complete to be a paramedic?
Yes, paramedic training is about, I would say, generally takes people about 2 years to complete. There's about 1 year of classroom. It delves far deeper into not only diseases, but how they interact with multiple body systems, multiple different treatment modalities that we can pursue, multiple different interventions, a whole host of medications, far more medications than a BLS. As a paramedic, I have a much wider range of drugs that I would be able to select to treat different patients.
As you worked through your training and got this experience, did you ultimately become employed by the Canton Fire Department?
Yes, sir.
What did they hire you as?
They hired me as a firefighter paramedic.
And so you were both a firefighter and a paramedic?
Yes, sir.
Does the Canton Police Department, in their units, do they include paramedics and firefighters in the same division?
The Canton Police Department or the Canton Fire?
The Canton Fire Department.
Canton Fire Department, the vast majority of the employees of the Canton Fire Department are paramedics. I believe there are I want to say 5 EMTs, but now as a requirement to remain employed by the Canton Fire Department. You have to become and maintain a paramedic certification.
So when you would go to work as a firefighter or paramedic, was it always the same, or did you get assigned as a firefighter one night and a paramedic a different night?
So we would cross-man trucks. We were always fire suppression personnel, but we were also cross-trained as paramedics. So, for example, if a fire call were to come in the town of Canton, and I was assigned to Ambulance 1 for the day, I would take all my equipment off Ambulance 1, and I would transfer it to Ladder 1, and then we would take Ladder 1 to the fire call and operate as fire suppression personnel. If a medical call were to come in, I'm assigned again to Ambulance 1, then we take on the role as EMS. I take my paramedic skills and put them to work in the town on Ambulance 1.
Let me ask you one more background question about how the Canton Fire Department works. When there's a call, an emergency call, is an ambulance sent with other vehicles or alone to the call?
Yes, sir. It's typically the engine of that district and the ambulance of that district. Depending on call volume, that can change. But if all is not to use the word quiet, it's kind of a taboo word, but if all is everybody's in quarters and there's a dispatch in District 1, it'll be Canton Engine 3 and Canton Ambulance 1, and they go as a unit together.
Mr. Nuttall, I want you to take us back, if you would, to the early morning hours of January 22nd, 2022. I want you to bring us a little bit before 6 a.m. Do you remember what you were doing?
Yes, sir. So that particular morning, I arrived at work earlier than I normally do. There was inclement weather that morning, so I left earlier than normal just to get in before the roadways got particularly difficult to travel and to relieve anybody that may need to get out if they needed to get home before the roads got particularly bad. I arrived just before 6 a.m. I was walking in. I was assigned to Ambulance 1 for that oncoming 24. I was scheduled to be there at 8 a.m.
Could you share with us a little bit about how the weather was as you arrived around 6 a.m.?
It wasn't great. I was driving. It's about a 35-minute ride for me to get to Canton. The roads were starting to get. They weren't great. They had been treated, but they weren't pristine. The wind was starting to pick up. The snow was starting to come down a little heavier, which is the reason that I left at the time I did.
And so I may have misspoke. January 29th, 2022, that morning, around 6:04, did you hear a tone or did you hear an alarm?
So the tones went off right as I entered the building.
Tell us what a tone is.
So the tone is the emergency alert tone. In the town of Canton, we have 3. We have 1 for fire, we have 1 for investigation, and we have 1 for EMS. The EMS tones went off and the lights came on. Whenever the tones go off, the lights come on as well. I was just walking into the building when the tones went off and the lights came on.
And is there information that accompanies the tone, information about the call that needs response?
Yes. So after the tones had cleared, there's an overhead dispatch, which is our dispatch center, communicates to us before we get in the trucks and on the air responding. Basic nature of the call. In that particular instance, we were dispatched to an unresponsive male in a snowbank with no real further information to follow up on.
So what do you do?
So as I said, I arrived pretty early that morning. But hearing that dispatch and that nature of the call, the crew that was working that morning was getting on the truck, and it was firefighter paramedic Anthony Flamati and firefighter EMT Matt Kelly. Matt Kelly has since become a paramedic, but at the time he was an EMT. So off the bat, that crew, not to say that they were at a disadvantage, but paramedic Flamati was the only paramedic on that ambulance.
What did you do?
So I made the decision. I checked with the shift commander, and I jumped on Ambulance 1 to just give a second set of hands as being a paramedic myself, just being able to hopefully help if there was any advanced interventions that needed to be done or needed to be performed.
What
And
happened?
just a second set of hands.
What happens next?
So I got in the back of the truck. I was actually still in civilian clothing at the time because I had just walked in the door. So I got in the back of ambulance one in the patient compartment. The other two gentlemen were up front driving to the scene. I actually had to don my turnout gear because, again, I was in civilian clothing. I wasn't quite ready to go. So I had to put all my structural turnout gear on and then my Canton fire jacket. Once I was sufficiently dressed for the call, I started prepping all the gear that we might need for a call such as that, for an unresponsive male in the snow. In this case, it was our first in bag, our airway bag, and our cardiac monitor. Everything was all together. They were all in 3 separate bags. But on the way there, I just got in. I didn't know how their night had gone, so I just took a real quick look at everything just to make sure everything was there and everything was exactly how it needed to be. So I was able to just grab all 3 bags, put them on my person, and get ready to, so as soon as the ambulance was on scene, just step off and go to work.
Not knowing much information about what you're going to confront, what goes through your mind as you prepare before you get off the ambulance?
Just basic scenarios. I mean, again, unresponsive male in the snow could mean several things. Not having much to go off on the dispatch was, it left much to be desired in terms of what we might need. So in gathering all the equipment together, it can kind of cover all the major bases, if you will, in terms of what we were expecting to meet once we got on scene.
How was your focus before you get off the ambulance?
I was ready to go. A dispatch like that, any unresponsive male in the snow, it can kind of up the level because you just don't know what you're walking into. You know, it could be anything.
In the back of the ambulance, you can't see outside. Could you tell anything about the weather conditions based on the way the ambulance was moving?
Again, being in the back, as you noted, it just seemed to be taking a little bit longer than normal. I really had no visibility at all. Like I said, I was in the patient compartment. It's very limited visibility in the back, and it's limited visibility. There's like a peephole that's maybe 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet to kind of peek up front. But again, I was so busy getting everything together, I really didn't notice. But I did note it took a little bit longer. We were going not slow, but we were going cautiously.
When the ambulance finally stopped and the doors open, tell the jury what you see.
So as I mentioned, I had the 2 bags and the cardiac monitor, so 3 pieces of equipment with me. And I stepped out of the back of the side of the truck. There's a back compartment, or a back door, and a side door. I stepped out of the side door. And I immediately noted the wind had picked up and the snow seemed to be heavier. And I could hear like a distant screaming off in the distance. Wasn't exactly sure where it was coming from.
What was the visibility like?
It wasn't great. It was still dark out. The sun had not come up yet. The snow was coming down, as I said, heavily. And it wasn't great all around.
Was it cold?
It was cold. Yes, sir.
And so when you hear the screams, what do you do next?
I started making my way kind of towards the sound, following the sounds. I couldn't see anybody yet. So I just kind of followed the sounds. And then once I was able to get around the side of the truck, that's when I was able to see a group of 3 individuals with Canton police. And I started making my way over to them to see where the patient might be located and what was going on.
As you get closer, tell us what you see.
So as we approached the scene, as I said, there were 3 individuals, and Canton police were on scene as well. And then there was what appeared to be a human figure laying supine in the snow. I'd say about 6 to 8 feet, kind of where the sidewalk met the front lawn of a residence.
What does supine mean?
So that he was laying on his back.
Okay.
From there, I made my way directly over to that individual and started checking for signs of life.
How do you check? Do you get close? Do you get down on the ground?
Yep, so I knelt right at his head. Typically, to check for any signs of life, it's just as you see in TV or anything like that. You check the carotid pulse, and you check for any signs of breathing or anything like that.
Where's the carotid pulse?
So the carotid pulse would be right in the neck. Like just real quick, 2 seconds, you can check either side. They're on both sides. Those are the strongest pulses that you can grab quickly. So I just real quick went right to that gentleman. Like I said, I looked for any signs of breathing. I found none. I checked a carotid pulse, and I found none.
How was his skin to the touch?
He was very cold to the touch.
He wasn't warm?
No.
And so after you touched his cold skin and you felt the carotid artery, is that how you
Yes, sir. Carotid artery.
did you come to any initial quick assessments or conclusions in your mind?
So I found, like I said, I checked for signs of life, the carotid, the signs of breathing. I found none. From there, we had ascertained that there is no signs of life. As I was checking that, the other two individuals on the ambulance came and met me, and they began doing the same thing, just to check. I mean, sometimes you can look and you can miss. So the other paramedic, Anthony Nuttall, started checking my work, and then we kind of went from there. But I found no signs of life in my initial.
So firefighter paramedic Nuttall arrived to this person after you did?
Yes, sir. I was the first one to actually put hands on the individual and check for signs of life.
Did you later learn the name of this man?
I did.
And what was that?
John O'Keefe.
After you found no signs of life for John O'Keefe, did you get up and go to speak to anybody?
I did. So as being a second set of hands on the call, it's really not my call, like in terms of treatment modalities and how we want to progress. So after I found no signs of life, I kind of got up to kind of look around real quick. I went over to the individuals, the three individuals that were there, and just said, hey, I just have found no signs of life. We're going to see the next steps. And as I was saying that was when Anthony Nuttall, who is the lead paramedic on this, made the decision this is a workable cardiac arrest.
Let me ask you two questions. The first is, as a paramedic firefighter, are there times when you're the lead paramedic on a call?
Yes, sir.
And so it changes call by call, but this one was firefighter or paramedic Nuttall's lead?
Correct. He was the lead paramedic on this call.
There are other times when you're the lead and firefighter or paramedic Nuttall is on your crew and you lead?
Yes, sir. So we typically switch off. We'll do one, and then once my rotation is complete, we'll do the next one. So it's patient for patient, typically.
When firefighter paramedic Nuttall called you back and said it was a workable situation, can you explain to the jury what that means?
Yes. So in medicine, there is a term that is you're not dead until you're warm and dead. Meaning your core temperature, your core body temperature has to be within normal limits for it to be considered a futile attempt at resuscitation. Noting that, Tony, the other paramedic, Tony Nuttall, realized that this gentleman was very cold to the touch and that this was now a hypothermic cardiac arrest, or a cardiac arrest in a hypothermic setting, which means as providers, we have a duty to initiate life-saving measures, CPR, ventilation, and continue those efforts until we get him to a hospital and a physician is able to take over and they are able to monitor his core body temperature for a certain amount of time.
I want to ask you about a term you used. You said a hypothermic situation. As a firefighter paramedic treating a patient at the scene, you're not diagnosing hypothermia, are you?
No, sir.
So you're not making a medical diagnosis, you're just saying it's a hypothermic situation because of why? Just
because of the conditions. He was extremely cold to the touch, and he was in the elements. We didn't know how long, so taking the fact that he is extremely cold to the touch and he had been outside for an unknown amount of time, that quantifies it to us as a hypothermic arrest or a cardiac arrest in a hypothermic setting.
Is there anything about Mr. O'Keefe's fingers or hands or his face that gave you any indication if he had been there just recently or had been there for a while?
His fingers were quite cold. They were not well perfused at all. They were very, very.
Mean? I don't know. What does not perfused mean?
Sorry, did not appear to have been any blood flow at all. Just because he was again, presumably being outside, his fingers were very, very white. They were very stiff, which can be signs of hypothermia and frostbite. And again, touching the neck. So typically when you get cold, you kind of work back from your extremities in. So again, I noted his fingers were quite cold, but also when I checked his carotid, his neck felt quite cold as well. That just kind of tipped us back further down the road of a hypothermic cardiac arrest.
I see. When firefighter Flamade called you back,
Yep.
where did you go exactly?
I went, so when I was told that this is what we're doing, I turned around and I went right back to where I previously knelt, which was right at Mr. O'Keefe's head. And then I took over the ventilation aspect of a cardiac arrest. So I was in charge of the airway. So I began giving him positive pressure ventilations with a bag valve mask, which is just a glorified balloon that you can push oxygen through and down into your respiratory tract to get oxygen moving. While I was doing that, I believe firefighter EMT Kelly had begun CPR.
So is this fair to say it's a team effort?
Yes, sir.
A coordinated effort?
Very much so.
And depending on where you're placed, whether in the back of the ambulance or driving or leading, does everybody have an important role to play?
Yes. Yeah, we work in conjunction with each other. Typically, the most well-defined roles in a cardiac arrest in EMS is your airway monitor, which was myself in this situation, and then your cardiac and medication administration, which is that would be Anthony Flamati, that would be Tony. Just because of my position at the head, I just took over the ventilation aspect, and that was where I remained throughout the call.
You said you went back to try to help Mr. O'Keefe, and you were helping at the airway. Do you have to actually get on the ground to do that?
Yes, sir. I was kneeling at his head.
While you were kneeling at his head, well, let me ask you more of a background question. Is it helpful to get information about the history of the person when you're trying to treat them when you happen upon a scene and you don't know the history?
Yes, sir, very much. Getting information on medications, history, and allergies is our top priorities in any call, not even this call, just really any your run-of-the-mill fall or chest pain. That's typically the first questions that we ask. What medications are you on? What medical history do you have? And do you have any allergies? The medical history is important because if you've had heart attacks in the past, or just using a generalized example, if you've had heart attacks in the past, does this feel like a previous heart attack? It kind of gives us something to go off of.
As you were nailing, I want you to take us to that moment. As you're nailing, trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, did you have a chance at any point to look up?
I did.
And when you looked up when you were trying to help Mr. O'Keefe, can you tell us who you saw?
I saw a middle-aged middle-aged female with blood. I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
You've been to a lot of calls over the years and since.
Yes, sir.
Would you say hundreds or thousands?
Thousands.
Do you remember all of them?
I remember aspects of various calls, but not all of them, no.
Do some stand out more than others?
Yes, sir.
Did this particular moment stand out more as compared to your typical or most calls that you've been to?
It did, just because of the setting. I mean, it was the weather, it was the unknown factors, and it was the attempting to try and get information and not really being able to glean anything from that.
After the defendant said to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, did you ask any follow-up questions?
I really didn't get a chance to, because following that, the individual just kind of walked away, or just kind of went in a different direction. I wasn't able to ask any follow-up questions.
Have you ever received any police training?
No, sir.
Are you a police officer?
No, sir.
When you're helping a patient, do you have any interest in detective work?
No, sir.
Do you have any interest in investigating potential crimes?
At that time, in this particular instance, because I was at the airway, that is a pretty critical aspect of a cardiac arrest. I was stuck there. I couldn't get up and kind of follow up on that at all. I was there doing that ventilation.
Is it your job to investigate cases, or simply to get information to help treatment?
Just the information.
When you go out as a firefighter paramedic, do you have a purposeful cause?
Yes, sir.
And what is that?
To save lives.
And is that your only focus?
In this instance, it was attempting to restore circulation and breathing.
At some point with your colleagues, did you lift Mr. O'Keefe from the ground?
We did.
When you lift him, what do you put him on?
So we put him on, it's called a scoop stretcher. It's basically just a hard plastic moving device with some seatbelts on it, just to get the patient up and onto the stretcher, and then from there we can move from the stretcher to the ambulance.
After you lift him to the stretcher, tell us what happens next.
So we put Mr. O'Keefe on the scoop stretcher, and we were able to get him onto the stretcher itself and then off to the ambulance. From there, I maintained my role as the airway individual on this call. So we made our way to the ambulance. I got in the tech seat, which is directly behind where the stretcher locks in, so I had access to the airway again. I was continuing to provide positive pressure ventilations to Mr. O'Keefe, and we had put in an OPA as well, which is just a plastic hook, if you will. It just keeps the tongue from falling back into the airway, so we can continue to provide positive pressure ventilations. Once we got him in the truck and we continued that effort, we set up a suction system, and we prepared to intubate Mr. O'Keefe. We prepared a suction system just because as I was ventilating outside of the ambulance, there were some secretions in the airway that I could see, and you could kind of hear it as you go to squeeze in breaths into the individual. You can kind of hear the secretions kind of getting like bubbly and stuff like that. So we knew we were going to need to suction him. So we got him in the truck, we really quickly suctioned him, and then we were able to intubate him successfully to definitively give him an advanced airway and give him better ventilations, get more oxygen into his system.
Now, you mentioned that he wasn't warm, he was very cold.
No, he was still very cold.
What does the team do to try to assist with that?
The most basic thing that we did, we turned the heat on as high as it would go. We also stripped all of his clothing off, just getting all of that wet clothing off of him. I didn't really have a role in that particular part of it, just because once you're on the airway, that is kind of yours. Nobody can breathe for him, so every time I squeeze that bag, he gets a breath. So I'm kind of tied to that airway for the duration of the call.
So when your colleagues are stripping the clothes off him, is your attention on the clothes or more on the airway in your job?
No, I'm maintaining the airway. If an endotracheal tube is dislodged for whatever reason, it is typically more difficult to get one in. So the integrity of that tube staying where it is and not being dislodged, that is another key aspect of airway management.
As you're doing that, do you notice what anybody else, any of your colleagues are doing to help?
Like I said, they were working on clothing removal. I believe they were also getting intravenous and intraosseous access on this individual to begin medication administration. But again, I was quite focused on that airway, just making sure that it was maintained and we didn't lose any tube. We didn't lose any end-tidal CO2, which is just another monitoring device that we use to confirm that tube is in place.
How quickly do you get to leave the scene and start moving towards the hospital?
I honestly couldn't give you an accurate estimate. It didn't seem to be out of the ordinary realm, though. We were able to move within the flow.
In addition to Mr. Keefe being very cold, did you notice any other injuries on him?
So I noted that he had a hematoma right above his right eye.
Could you explain to us what that is?
Yep, it's just, for lack of a better term, it's just a big egg. He had a pretty good bump over his eye.
And you said his right eye.
Yes, sir.
Did you know how that hematoma was caused?
No, sir.
No idea?
No.
In addition to the hematoma above his right eye, what other injuries did you see?
There were also several scratches on his right arm, just below his shoulder, and traveling down his right humerus. They terminated right about his right elbow, just above it.
Those scratches, have you also described them as abrasions?
Yes, sir.
Is there any difference in your mind, difference between scratches and abrasions?
Nope. These were they were deep, and they were not bleeding, but they were notably deep.
Did you ever describe it as furrows?
I did.
And in describing those scratches, do you have any idea how they were caused?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you notice any other injuries on Mr. O'Keefe?
No, sir. Those were the only ones that we noted. As I mentioned, we suctioned a little bit of blood out of the back of his airway as well. I believe it was blood, mucus, and saliva. But those were the extent of the injuries that I was able to note.
Did you notice anything about the back of his head?
Actually, yes, I did. I apologize. There seemed to be a little bit of matted blood around in his hair around there. Really didn't see anything too obvious at the time. He was also placed in a cervical collar as well, following intubation, and that was kind of there just to maintain his cervical spine. But there was, like I said, there was noted to be a little bit of dried blood on the back of his head.
At some point, did you finally make your way with Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Hospital?
Yes, sir.
And just share with us what happens when you get there.
So after we got there, we handed off care to Good Samaritan Medical's physicians and ER nurses. We were able to give a report to the physician of just basic what we've done, what we've given for medications, in my case, what he was intubated with, and how he was being ventilated, how well he was being ventilated, and any other further pertinent information. Typically, we noted that Tony was the lead paramedic, so that is typically his. He kind of holds the room for a minute when we get in there, gives a big rundown, and then we back off and let Good Samaritan take over.
Okay. When the defendant told you that she hit him, did that have any significance to you?
No, sir.
Did it reconcile with the injuries that you saw before you that Mr. O'Keefe was suffering from?
No, sir.
And so at that point, was that information insignificant in perspective of your care?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. What role did that information play in your care after the defendant told you she hit him? How did that contribute or not contribute to what you were doing?
It really didn't help at the time. Again, I wasn't able to chase anything down from that. I just kind of took it, noted it, and moved on with my aspect of the cardiac arrest.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity at any point to see any video of that morning taken from any source, a police car, dash cam?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce a video stream.
Okay. So this will be in evidence? There are agreements with some of the evidence already?
I believe there's no objection, but I don't want to speak for the defense.
There's no objection.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you can show it.
And for the record, if I may note, this is Cruiser 683 Stream 2.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry. It is Cruiser 683 Stream 2. I'm going to ask to play a portion of it that's relevant to Mr. Nuttall. Ms. Gillum, if you would please move to 6:11 a.m. Please stop the video. Mr. Nuttall, do you see the red lights reflecting on the left?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what those red lights are?
Presumably, those would be ambulance 1.
Yeah, so not what you presume. Do you know what they are, sir?
And those are the lights for ambulance 1.
Do you see the weather conditions as it's depicted on this video?
Yes, sir.
Oh, as you stood outside, was it same or different to how it appears in this video?
That is the same.
When you look to the left, you see a straight line about an inch or two from the left of the screen. Do you know what that item is?
Sorry, sir. Repeat the question.
If you look to the left of the screen,
Yep.
you'll see a straight item from the bottom halfway up the picture. Do you know what that item is on
I believe
the video?
that's a flagpole, sir.
Do you see a little bit of movement of bodies near that flagpole?
At the present time, no.
Okay. Could we continue to play, please?
Yep, there they are.
Could you stop, please? Did you see the first person in line now behind the person with in front of the person with the blue hat?
I'm sorry, sir. Can you back it up like 10 seconds?
Certainly. Keep going, please. Do you know who that person is?
I believe that's me, sir.
Okay. Could you please continue? Is this your first assessment?
Yes, sir. This is ascertaining any signs of life or breathing.
Is that you approaching?
Yes, sir.
Could you stop, please? After informing you return, is that after firefighter Flamati called you?
So right after that, when I turned around, that was when Tony said, "Hey, we're working this."
Okay. Please continue. Stop, please. And do you see a person come over to where you are?
Yes, sir.
Is it at that point or another moment when the defendant said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him"?
It was right there, sir.
Could you continue, please? Could you stop for a moment? There's no voices or noises from people coming through that audio. When you were there that night, throughout the event, was it silent or were people speaking? Did you hear people speaking?
There was, as I noted when I got out of the truck, there was quite a bit of screaming. It was quite chaotic. The wind was also a factor, but there were people around. They were speaking within themselves too, but there was screaming, there was wind, and there was different side conversations as well.
And when you were working on Mr. O'Keefe, were you having conversations with your colleagues?
Yes, sir.
They're not picked up on the audio?
No, sir.
Please continue. Sir, are you still at the flagpole?
Yes, sir. I'm kneeling at the head of the patient.
Are you included in that group of first responders?
I am not, sir. I have actually exited to the side with the bags. I believe I'm entering the ambulance at this point.
Okay. Thank you. We can conclude the viewing. With the court's permission, I'd like to approach and show a few exhibits to Mr. Nuttall. They've been shown to the defense.
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. No objection.
Okay.
I'm going to show you a photograph.
Yes, sir.
Sir, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yes, sir. Those are the scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Does that appear the same as when you saw his arm that morning, or is there any differences? And if there's any differences, can you share them with us?
That appears how they were to me at the time of the incident.
Okay. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce this as an exhibit, please.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm going to hand you a...
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Your Honor. May we publish to the jury?
Yes.
Is that the photograph you just identified on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Showing you a second photograph, I'd like to ask you some questions about it.
Can we take that one down, Mr. Brennan?
Yes, of course.
Please, Ms. Gilman.
Thank you. Does that photograph, do you recognize that area?
Yes, sir.
Is that the same or substantially the same area where you helped try to treat John O'Keefe?
Yes, sir.
And does that look to be a fair and accurate representation of the area?
It does.
With the court's permission, I would introduce this as an exhibit, please.
Okay, and there's no objection to any of these three?
None.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the court's permission, could I publish exhibit 2?
Yes.
And sir, that's what you recognize as the area where you were helping to treat John O'Keefe.
Yes, sir.
I've left one last photograph in front of you.
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize that?
I do.
Tell us about any differences between when you were there and what you see in that photograph.
The street appears to be plowed. There's bare pavement. The weather conditions are significantly better. It is also daytime.
Okay. If we could take down that exhibit 2, Ms. Gilman. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I would move to introduce this as exhibit 3.
All right.
Exhibit 3, so marked.
With the court's permission, I'd like to publish exhibit 3.
Sure.
Is that the photo you just identified?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we can take that down. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Jackson?
Thank you, Your Honor. May I?
Yes, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, Firefighter Nuttall.
Good afternoon, sir.
Nice to see you again.
You as well.
Before your testimony this morning, how many conversations had you had with any member of the prosecution team in anticipation of your testimony today?
I believe it was 3, sir.
When were those?
I could not give you dates off the top of my head.
Give me a time frame. Within the last 3 weeks, within the last 3 months, last 3 days?
Within the last 3 weeks, I believe one the week after that, and then one last night.
One?
Last night.
Last night. What you did discuss, let's take them in order. First of all, who'd you meet with 3 weeks ago?
I met with Mr. Brennan and his staff.
And when you say his staff, who else?
I honestly couldn't tell you, sir.
Mr. Lally?
No, sir.
Male, female?
One female and one, I believe, state trooper.
Okay. Had you ever met State Trooper Tully previously?
Yes, sir. Actually, I believe that was him.
It was State Trooper Tully?
Yes, sir.
Whom you've met with several times, correct?
Prior to that, I believe only once or twice.
He was the one that he has formally interviewed you previously, correct?
I believe he arranged the meetings with Mr. Brennan.
Okay.
But beyond that, I can't speak to.
What did y'all discuss 3 weeks ago?
The first meeting, going in order, it was mostly just kind of an introduction. I had not met Mr. Brennan yet. I really didn't know him. So it was mostly that, and then just kind of seeing where we were at with testimony, going over previous testimony and in that sort of realm.
Prior to today, how many times have you testified under oath concerning the incident on January 29th, 2022?
Once at a grand jury hearing and once last year.
All right. As a matter of fact, last year in this courtroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you look over your testimony at the grand jury 3 weeks ago during that meeting?
No, sir.
What about the testimony from last year?
We did go over the testimony from last year. Yes, sir.
Were there any issues that Mr. Brennan or anybody else in that meeting brought up concerning any of your testimony?
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
And were you advised that that's not what you said at your testimony last year?
No,
sir. 2
sir.
times?
What was that?
You said it was 2 times last year?
I honestly can't recall, sir.
Okay. But you just saw that, or you just read that and went over that 3 weeks ago?
I believe so, sir, yeah.
But you can't remember, as you sit here today, just 3 weeks ago, what y'all discussed in terms of how many times you previously testified that you heard the phrase, I hit him?
So previously testified possibly to 2, but it was 3.
Okay. Your memory is clearer now than it was, for instance, a year ago when you testified?
Repeat that?
Sure. Your memory is clearer now, as you sit here, that it was 3 times you heard that, than it was a year ago when you testified that it was 2 times?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does your memory get better with time generally? Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others. Okay. And does your memory tend to get better, or does it fade over time? That's my question. It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You then met about a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The same group.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony, and that was really the gist of it. And tell me the specifics of the prior testimony that you... Again, it was the how many times we had talked about saying I hit him. Again, it was 3 times. And then there was also the video that was just played for me. If I'll take the video in just a second. If y'all had met 3 weeks ago and you indicated to Mr. Brennan that it was actually 3 times, not 2 times that you heard the I hit him, why did you need to discuss it again a week later to verify the 3 times versus 2 times? Not sure, sir. That was just the way that the conversation went. And I just, again, repeated what I said and what I remember from that morning. Well, tell me about that conversation. Did Mr. Brennan say anything like, well, are you really sure that she said it 3 times? It was that morning what was said to you. And I said, I hit him. That was how it went that morning, and that was how I remember it. Okay. And did Mr. Brennan say, well, that's not consistent with how you've testified previously concerning the number of times you heard the I hit him phrase? Yes, sir. He did say that? He wanted to he acknowledged that I had said it twice. However, again, as I mentioned, it was said 3 times to me.
So now you do remember last year that you only said you only said that it was repeated twice.
One more time, sir.
So now you do recall that last year when you testified, it was inconsistent with how you're testifying today. Let me put it that way. Correct?
I believe I said I hit him twice on the stand last year.
Right. And if you're saying I hit him 3 times instead of twice, that, firefighter Nuttall, is inconsistent with your testimony today, correct? You
Yes,
agree
sir,
with that?
but that is how it went that morning, though, sir.
Okay, that's not my question. Let me see if I can do it again. So I'm asking you, if you testified last year
Yes, sir.
that you heard the phrase twice, and now a year goes by and you're testifying in front of this jury this year that you heard it 3 times, those 2 statements are inconsistent with one another, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you talk at the meeting 2 weeks ago about any other inconsistencies with your testimony?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Well, you were there. And you
No.
say not to my knowledge, meaning,
No, sir. We did not.
okay. So it was just about the number of times that you heard the phrase, I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You cleared that up in the 2 meetings, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago. What did you talk about last night?
Mostly just making sure that everything was as it had been. I mean, and by that I mean it was 3 times, and that we were continuously making sure that everything was the way that it had happened that morning.
Everything was the way that Mr. Brennan wanted it to be.
No, sir. The way that it was in, I remember it, and I recall it happening.
Okay, so he asked you 3 weeks ago about how many times you heard that phrase.
Yes, sir.
You changed your testimony at that time and said it was 3 times instead of 2 times. We agree on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then he called you a week later, or met with you a week later, and again reiterated, making sure you stick with that testimony that it's 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then last night he called you just to make sure one more time you're going to stick with that testimony that it was 3 times, not 2 times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Hold on just a second. May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. And when you talked last night, did you assure Mr. Brennan, nope, when we come in tomorrow, I'm certainly going to say it was 3 times, not 2 times?
No, sir. I told him I would tell my recollection of that morning.
Okay. And did you tell him that what my recollection is, I'm going to tell the jurors it was 3 times that I heard it?
That was what I heard.
Okay. Did you tell him that's what you were going to say today?
No, sir.
You didn't?
I told him I was going to tell him what I remembered from that morning.
Which was what?
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Which is how many times?
3 times, sir.
And that's inconsistent with what?
I believe a year ago.
Okay. Now, you also talked about, I want to get back to the other thing that you talked about. You said that at some point, either in the meeting 3 weeks ago, the meeting 2 weeks ago, or the meeting last night, you were shown a video.
Yes, sir.
Which one of those meetings were you shown a video?
I believe the second one.
Okay. Were you shown the entire video?
No, sir.
Just the clip that we saw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did y'all talk about in relation to that video?
Mostly nailing down who was who in that video.
Okay.
Being the other personnel on scene, where I was, and that was about it.
He showed you the clip that you showed. He showed you the clip that you just seen on direct examination, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him where you were?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Brennan ask you to define exactly where it was that you supposedly heard this phrase, I hit him?
No, I was able to give that to him, sir.
Okay. And what you told him was that moment when you see my client walk over sort of to the left of the screen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you defined, that's the point at which she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
And that's in response to your question. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. You asked, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
And she repeated the phrase 3 times, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Correct.
Okay. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Did Mr. Brennan ask anything else about that specific video?
No, like I said, he kind of asked me to point out different individuals on the scene, and that was really the extent of it.
You saw that same video last year when you testified, correct?
No, sir.
You didn't see it last year?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In preparation for your testimony last year?
I did not.
Did you see it before your grand jury testimony?
No, sir.
Okay, so this is the first time that you've seen it.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you were able to establish for Mr. Brennan exactly when it was that you believe you heard the statement based on your view about 2 weeks ago of that video.
No, that was the way that I remember it.
Right. Not a trick question. My question is much more simple. You were able to establish after 3.5 years now exactly where you were and where Miss Reed was and who else was around at the time that you believe you heard those three statements in order. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified last year as well that there is a normal protocol for removing clothing from a patient, and it's essential to just discard it and get it away from the patient so that you can concentrate on the life-saving measures that you're undertaking, correct?
Yes, sir.
That could be done in the ambulance, it could be done in the hospital, it could be done in situ, out there in the field, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the point is you want to get as much clothing off of the person as possible so that you can assess that person's physiology.
Yes, sir.
There's not really a lot of care taken to preserve the clothing from an evidentiary standpoint, in your view, correct?
We're trained to try and, just to take example of a shooting, try not to cut through the entrance wound of the clothing.
Fair enough, fair enough. I mean, when you're literally trying to save someone's life, your job is to get the clothing off and get it out of the way.
Yes, sir.
You're not sticking it in an evidence bag and sealing the evidence bag, things of that nature.
No, sir.
So it might end up on the ground.
Yes.
Right? Might end up with some debris on it.
Yep.
Might end up on the floor of the ambulance.
Yes, sir.
Could end up in the floor of the hospital, or on the floor of the hospital. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if it's tossed in the floor of the ambulance, the clothing may well pick up debris from the ambulance.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Or the debris from the floor of the hospital or wherever. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified previously at the grand jury in April of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir. I believe so, sir.
Okay. So this happened in January of 2022, that same year in the springtime. You testified at the grand jury, April 20th, I think it was.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, I want to take you back to that testimony for a second. You testified at that hearing that Mr. O'Keefe was, quote, dressed appropriately for the weather. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. It was obviously well below freezing at that time.
Yes.
That night that you responded.
It was.
We just seen the video. It looks cold as hell, right?
It was chilly.
All right. The wind was howling.
Yep.
It was snowing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that John O'Keefe, quote, had a heavy coat on and possibly 2 other layers of clothing.
Yes, sir.
In April 2024, you reiterated your very specific memory of and you even called it a puffy heavy coat that he was wearing, which was then removed so that you could assess his injuries, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Not to get too colloquial, but a puffy coat is like it's got down and stuff in it, right?
Correct.
Looks kind of like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pretty distinctive article of clothing.
Yep.
And you testified last year that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing that clothing, which you had to remove or somebody had to remove in order for him to be properly assessed.
I did testify that way, yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that your memory of that big, heavy winter coat was as clear as your memory of other specifics in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
I asked you that exact question, didn't I?
You did.
And I said, your memory of him having that big, puffy coat on, which stood out in your mind, was just as clear as the other specifics that you've testified to about the case.
Yes, sir.
About that night. And turns out you were completely wrong about his clothing, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, he wasn't wearing a coat at all.
No, sir.
He wasn't wearing a winter coat, correct?
Nope.
He wasn't wearing a heavy winter coat, correct?
Correct.
And he wasn't wearing a puffy, heavy winter coat.
He was not.
Yet you testified that he was wearing all of that, and that was clear in your mind at the time.
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Brennan bring that up during the meeting 3 weeks ago?
He asked about what I had meant when I said appropriately dressed.
So you did talk about something other than just the I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
When I asked what y'all talked about, why didn't you tell us that?
To be perfectly honest, sir, I did not remember until right now.
So your memory is fading even after 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Got it. The fact is, well, let me ask you a different question. Did Mr. Brennan tell you what Mr. O'Keefe was actually wearing?
No, sir. Actually, I believe you did.
Last year, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
It's a short sleeve T-shirt and a little thin wool hoodie, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wasn't wearing a hat.
No, sir.
Wasn't wearing, as a matter of fact, didn't even have a shoe on, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
And obviously, goes without saying, but I'm going to ask it anyway, that's not being appropriately dressed for the winter.
No, sir.
Yeah. You indicated that you did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person.
Sir.
Once you got him back in the ambulance, obviously it's lighter, meaning brighter lights. You have more equipment in the back of the ambulance. You can better assess somebody's well-being, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated you had a, quote, much better picture of what we were dealing with, correct?
Yes.
You noticed once in the back of the ambulance that he had trauma to the right side of his head.
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, when you were pointing at it, I'm doing that on purpose because you pointed to the right side of your sort of forehead above your right eyebrow, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The majority, or the worst injury that Mr. O'Keefe suffered was actually to the back of his head, which you indicated, you noted, was quite matted with blood, correct?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the injury to the right side of his head as distinct from the back of the head injury for just a second. Before I get to that in detail, let me ask you, because I just sort of want to cover the bases. You noted the back of the head injury, correct? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
You also noted the front right side of the head above the right eye, correct?
We did.
You noted some injury to his eyes. They looked blackened.
Yes, sir.
But primarily the right eye was blackened?
Yep.
And there was a golf ball sized egg, I think you put it, over his right eye,
It did.
often called a hematoma.
Correct.
And you also noted when you got his shirt off that he had scratches along the right side of his arm. Is that right?
Sir.
You indicated on direct examination today that you believe those scratches ended where? Meaning from top to bottom? And I'm not using anatomically correct
No.
language. So from shoulder to wrist, where were the scratches that you noted?
There were several. As I noted, they were on his right humerus area.
Tell me what a humerus is.
The right arm.
Biceps.
Right about here.
Okay.
No, a little further, like between where your bicep and your tricep kind of meet. Right,
Got it.
right about in there.
Okay. And what did the scratches look like?
They were deep, infamously referred to them as furrows, but they were quite deep. You could tell that there had been some material removed.
Okay. Material meaning skin and flesh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Some biological material. Mm-hmm. Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
And were they parallel? Meaning they were going in the same direction?
Yes.
Were there any scratches below the elbow as
There
well?
were. Yes, there
Okay.
were. They were not as significant as the ones on the upper arm, but they were noted.
Okay. And those were parallel as well?
Yes, sir.
And they looked like scratches to you. That's how you described them?
They did.
Last year, when you described those scratches, you curled your fingers up, exposing sort of the nails, and drew it across your biceps. Is that what you were using to describe what the sort of scratches looked like?
I just kind of used that as a landmark, to be honest with you,
Okay.
sir. It was just kind of how I quantified it in my mind.
Okay. But what you did was you did this motion.
Yes, sir.
As you said, there were furrows. And remember, there was an embarrassing moment for me.
Both of us, sir.
I couldn't understand the word furrow because of the accent, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the hematoma above the right eye for a second. That's basically damage to subdural blood vessels that causes acute swelling, right?
Correct.
And a very common cause of a hematoma over one's eye could be being hit or punched in the face. We talked about that.
There could be several causes for hematoma, such as that.
Obviously. I mean, it could be a golf club, a baseball bat, or it could be a fist.
It could be.
Okay. We talked about that last year. I asked you if the injuries that you saw on Mr. O'Keefe's face, including the laceration over his right eye, was consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation, and you said it was consistent with a physical altercation as well.
Objection to the
Excuse me?
objection to referring to past testimony before a question is asked.
So sustained.
Sure. Do you remember a laceration, in addition to the hematoma, about a 0.8 centimeter laceration over his right eye?
I do.
Tell me I'm using a word that maybe not everybody understands. I didn't understand it when we first started this thing. What's a laceration? What's the difference between that and a cut?
A laceration is they're basically the same thing. A laceration is just a deep cut.
Okay. So it's a parting of the skin.
Correct.
In other words, where the skin separates.
Yes.
And that can be from blunt force trauma, meaning something hits it rather than cuts it.
You can get
Sustained.
What are some of the causes of lacerations?
You can get a laceration, as you noted, blunt force, but you can also get a laceration from a slashing movement, from a stabbing. I mean, that is still a laceration.
What about a hematoma?
That is primarily caused by blunt force trauma.
Right. And the hematoma and the laceration were right next to each other, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicated last year, or let me ask you this way. Is that consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
I could not say, Your Honor.
Okay. Next question.
Well, last year, you indicate you can't answer that. Last year, you did answer it, didn't you?
Objection.
So I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute, please. Mr. Nuttall, we are going to let you take a break with Jack and Dennis after the luncheon break. So this is
Sounds good.
the luncheon break. There's lunch here for you. I assume Tony is it here?
It is here.
Okay. There's lunch here for you. We'll see you in about a half an hour. 50 minutes.
All right. Lamati and yourself, correct?
Correct.
Do you know the name Katie McLaughlin?
I do.
Who is Katie McLaughlin?
She is a firefighter paramedic for the town of Canton.
Was she also on the call?
She was.
You didn't mention her this morning.
It did not come up. She responded on the initial dispatch on engine 3.
You were asked who responded with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
By Mr. Brennan.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned yourself. You mentioned Tony Flamati. And you mentioned Matt Kelly.
Yes, myself, firefighter Flamati, and firefighter Kelly responded in ambulance 1 together.
Okay. And how did firefighter McLaughlin respond?
So she was assigned to engine 3 that night. She was with Lieutenant Woodbury and firefighter paramedic Frank Walsh.
Is she also, in addition to Walsh being, it's Frank Walsh?
Yes, sir.
In addition to firefighter Walsh being a paramedic, Katie McLaughlin was also a paramedic.
Correct.
Okay. So she responded to the scene at the same time as you, generally, but in a different ambulance.
In a fire truck, in a piece of fire apparatus. She was
Got
in
it.
engine 3.
Got it. Engine 3. Okay. And she was with you, generally, when I say with you, at the scene during the entire time that you're describing the events that you described with Mr. Brennan on direct examination.
For the most part.
Okay. She then left in a particular ambulance, correct?
Yes, so she ended up driving ambulance 1 to Good Samaritan.
And ambulance 1 was which ambulance?
Ambulance 1 was the initial ambulance that myself, firefighter Kelly, and firefighter Flamati responded in.
So right after the scene you described, as you're leaving the scene, firefighter McLaughlin is in the ambulance with you and firefighter Flamati, correct?
She is driving. So the 3 of us are in the back in the patient compartment. She is up front in the driver's seat.
Once at the hospital, did firefighter McLaughlin go into the hospital with the other firefighters?
I believe so, yes.
So she was with you in the engine, she was, although in the driving cab, she was with you, ambulance in the driving cab. She was also with you right after the scene at the hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she was also with you later after you cleared the hospital and went back to the station.
Yes, sir.
You had discussions with firefighter Flamati about the incident. That would be normal protocol.
Correct.
Almost like a debrief.
Sure.
You had the same types of discussions with firefighter Kelly, Matt Kelly.
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing that you probably had the same sorts of discussions with firefighter Walsh.
I actually don't know if I saw firefighter Walsh when we got back. The weather was right at shift change, and the weather getting back was also getting worse, so I honestly couldn't speak to that.
And you also had conversations with firefighter McLaughlin after you cleared the hospital and got back to the station as well.
She was part of the debrief, yes, sir.
Okay. And all of you discussed what you did, saw, and heard, generally speaking, while at the scene, correct?
Those are more in terms of getting equipment wrangled, really kind of how they go. What did we use? What do we need? What are we going to have to restock when we get back?
Right. But there also was obviously discussions about what had just happened. I mean, you were dealing with a dead or dying police officer on a lawn, on a snow-covered lawn in a cold environment.
I honestly couldn't speak to that, sir. I honestly don't remember.
It's because you don't remember, correct?
Well, like I said, it's mostly those debriefs are usually they're very equipment oriented because the goal at that point is to get back in service.
My question is not about the equipment. Obviously, you're going to discuss the equipment, make sure that the ambulance is ready for the next call, etc. I'm asking about a general debrief with the fellow firefighters, male and female, that you were with at that scene. You're telling me that you don't remember debriefing and discussing the incident and your observations at the incident following that incident.
No, sir.
Okay. But your memory, you indicated earlier, gets better with time, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't remember it as you sit here today?
Ask the question again.
Sure. Do you remember discussing with firefighter Flamati, firefighter Walsh, firefighter Kelly, or firefighter McLaughlin, any of them, your observations and what happened while at the scene after you cleared the hospital and got back to the station?
No, sir.
Have no memory of that whatsoever?
No, sir.
When we left off before lunch, I was asking you about a hematoma and a laceration over the right eye of Mr. O'Keefe. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
I asked you, is being punched in the face, can that lead to a small laceration like you saw and a hematoma like you saw?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it. Can you answer that question?
I couldn't speak to how that injury occurred.
Is it consistent? Are those injuries, just those injuries, are those consistent with being punched in the face?
Those injuries could be sustained from numerous ways.
And I
Yes,
didn't-
it could be from that. It
That-
could be from others as well.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you. It could be, in other words, it's consistent
Yes,
with
sir.
being punched in the face, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I want to ask you about this statement that you indicate that you heard that now is 3 statements, 3 phrases, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you heard this statement, describe for me exactly where you were. What were you doing and who was around you?
I was knelt at the head of John O'Keefe with a bag valve mask, delivering ventilations. Firefighter Kelly was to the right, and Firefighter Flamati was on the left side of Mr. O'Keefe, and the 3 of us together were working to perform CPR and ventilations.
And your job, and I hate to butcher it, but
Nope.
you'll correct me.
Yes, sir.
Your job was to do the airway, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm picturing a big balloon-like apparatus that you put over the patient's mouth. And
Exactly.
Squeeze it.
Yes.
That's as opposed to, it's an advancement on just mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You were the airway person doing the squeezing of the bag.
Correct.
What was Tony Flamati, firefighter Flamati, doing?
He was starting CPR, in which that point was taken over by Firefighter Kelly.
Okay, so firefighter Flamati, when you say starting CPR, describe what that means. What is the physical act of CPR?
So you put both hands together like this, one on top of the other. You put it right on top of the sternum, and you begin doing chest compressions 2 inches deep, allowing full recoil for 100 to 120 beats per minute, compressions a minute to sustain a cardiac rhythm. You're manually making the heart beat with each compression.
Which means that is a rhythmic pumping motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you see someone doing CPR, you're probably going to see their shoulders moving up and down and moving rhythmically, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember what firefighter Flamati was wearing? You had just come off of actually you were just coming onto a shift, so you didn't have all your foul weather gear officially, correct?
I had my puffy jacket. I
Okay.
had my Canton Fire jacket.
Got it. Firefighter Flamati, on the other hand, had a bright yellow jacket,
Correct.
sort of reflective and a safety jacket.
Yes, sir.
And he was kneeling to your left at the time doing, have I got that right?
Yep, nope, yep, you got that right.
Okay, he's kneeling to your left at the time doing chest compressions. That's when you indicate that Miss Reed walked over and made the statement.
Correct.
And Kelly was there as well?
Yes, sir.
Kneeling right beside all 3 of you as firefighter Flamati was giving the chest compressions, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You indicated that the statement was in response to a question that you asked of my client, do you know him?
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Correct.
And she responded to you with the phrase that you've used, I hit him.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Right. So it's absolutely clear in your mind when that statement was made. You were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Firefighter Flamati was doing the CPR, and Kelly was with the both of you when you posed that question.
Yes, sir.
It's a very detailed memory.
Yes, sir.
You indicated, Mr. Brennan, that sticks out in your mind. Is that right?
It does.
But that's not at all what you told Trooper Proctor on February 8th, just 10 days after this incident, is it?
I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
I thought your memory got better with time.
I don't recall that meeting.
Okay.
I recall meeting with him, but I don't recall the extent of what was discussed.
You literally don't recall anything that was discussed in that meeting in that formal interview with the lead detective on this case.
We discussed the case, but I don't, in his words. I'm not sure what he put down.
What you said to Trooper Proctor on February 8th, 10 days after this, was you overheard Miss Reed say, "I hit him," one time to another female that she was talking to. Correct?
Objection.
No, I'll allow it. Did you say that?
I have no memory of this, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
Did you say that her statement was an answer to a question posed by the female, or a discussion with the female?
Break that down for me, sir.
Sure. Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th that what you heard was Karen Reed speaking to a female, not answering a question that you posed?
Again, I don't recall that specific question.
Did you tell Trooper Proctor on February 8th, while you were rendering aid, and at the time you heard the statement, Miss Reed was actually praying over John? Your words, praying over John.
I don't recall ever saying that.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Did you say that you observed Karen Reed to have blood on her face from providing mouth-to-mouth breaths to Mr. O'Keefe prior to your arrival?
I remember Miss Reed having blood on her face, presumably from attempting CPR.
Do you remember telling Trooper Proctor on February 8th that you saw her with blood on her face from CPR?
I do.
So you remember that portion of your conversation with Trooper Proctor, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the praying over John, praying over the victim, you don't remember.
I don't remember ever saying that. Ever.
And the statement, "I hit him," to another female, you also don't remember that.
No, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection if you were to look at a report
Yes, sir.
authored by Trooper Proctor? May I?
Yes.
May I direct the witness's attention to the second page, Your Honor?
All right, why don't you take a look at that, sir?
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, did you have an opportunity to glance at the report that you were just shown?
Yes, sir.
Does that refresh your recollection about your conversation with Trooper Proctor that he put in a report?
It does not, sir.
So as you sit here, you have no memory of what you just read in this report from Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator on the case?
I have no recollection of ever saying that anybody prayed over anybody ever in this case.
You did see it in his report, though.
Right.
Sustained.
You've admitted under oath that your memory of the events at that time, from that time frame, January, February 2022, is faulty, correct?
No, sir.
In your April 2024, it's April 30th, 2024 testimony from last year, you were asked whether or not your memory was a little faulty, and your answer was absolutely, correct?
Could I have a page and number,
Where is
please?
that, Mr. Jackson?
Volume 8, page 151, lines 14 through 16.
Can you give me the lines again?
Lines 14 through 16. I'll just allow counsel to get that up.
If we could pose the entire question and give content to it, please.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah, so do you intend to show the whole question?
The whole question that I asked and his answer, yes.
All right, and I'll give you the opportunity on redirect, Mr. Brennan, if it's not. Go ahead.
Is it true that in answer to the question, quote, so it's fair to say your memory is a little bit faulty as it pertains to that time frame, your answer was absolutely. Correct?
From last year?
What you testified to last year about conversations that you had with Trooper Proctor around February 8th of 2022.
Yes, sir.
And you would agree, as you sit here, that your memory is still faulty about your conversation with him.
With
Correct?
Trooper Proctor? Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So you're not saying you didn't say that the statement was made to a woman, correct?
Objection.
Are you saying that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, next question.
Thank you. And you're also not saying that you didn't say to Trooper Proctor that you saw Karen Reed praying over John O'Keefe.
Objection.
So I'd like you to ask that differently. Did you say that?
I have no recollection of saying that ever.
Okay. Next question.
My point is, if you have no recollection of it, you're not denying saying it.
Objection.
Are you denying saying it?
Yes.
Okay.
So you do have a recollection that you never said it. Do you understand the difference?
Oh, sir, I don't believe I've ever said praying. That's really not something that I would have said. I didn't see it that day. It didn't happen. I don't remember ever saying prayed
You didn't
in regards
see
to
it
this case ever.
You didn't see it that day, and it never happened. That was your words just now, correct?
Break that down for me.
You didn't see it that day, and it never happened. That's what you're saying about the praying statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that same exact statement, you also included the phrase, I hit him, correct?
No, sir.
In the statement that you made to Trooper Proctor?
The report that Trooper Proctor wrote?
Correct.
Again, I don't remember ever saying the words praying over him. I do distinctly remember I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Which doesn't appear in that report, does it?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain that, Mr. Jackson. You directed him only to page 2.
Understood, Your Honor. I'd like to show you a short portion of a video, the same video that you were asked to look at on direct examination. And Your Honor, I pray to the court, I can certainly mark it as a defense exhibit or for
So is
identification.
this going to be an exhibit by agreement?
It is.
It is.
So we now that, Madam Court Reporter, thank you.
See the course on that.
Thank you, Your Honor. With the court's permission, may I play a portion of that video for the jurors, publish it?
Okay. Which portion so people know?
I'm going to start it at about, I want to say 6:55. Mr. Walt could cue that up. Before you play it, can we have it on that screen as well, or is it only playing to this screen?
I don't know. When Ms. Gilman did it, it was both. Great.
There we go. All right. Before we play it, can I ask you a quick question about this?
Sure.
It appears that this is paused. Do you recognize this as being the same video that you were shown this morning by Mr. Brennan?
I do.
All right. Describe the scene.
So that is 34 Fairview Road. The lights in the background, I believe it is either right as we pulled up or right as we're pulling up.
Okay. Same dash cam video.
Yes, sir.
Can we scroll this to the 6:55 runtime spot, please? Pause it. Okay. Do you see the individual on the left? Far left.
Yeah, the jacket?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
I believe that's firefighter Flamati.
You previously indicated that when you heard Ms. Reed make this statement, that firefighter Flamati was on his knees providing CPR at the same time you were knelt down providing the airway?
This isn't when it was
That's
stated.
not my question. Is that what you said?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. You indicated earlier when you heard this statement by my client, you were very detailed. Firefighter Flamati was knelt down providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support for Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
I had also said that at some point,
That's a
firefighter
yes or no
Flamati
question.
Objection.
So I'm going to let the witness answer the question.
had transferred CPR to firefighter Kelly. Firefighter Kelly did take over compressions at one point.
Okay. That's not my question.
Okay.
My question is an easy one. Did you say that when Miss Reed walked over to you and you had this dialogue with her, she made that statement that firefighter Flamati was on his knees providing chest compressions at the same time you were knelt down providing airway support?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Firefighter Flamati, your testimony, appears to be standing up right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's play the video forward for just a second. Stop it. What did you see firefighter Flamati do just now?
I believe he just knelt down.
Okay. So at this point, he's kneeling for the first time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he's about to provide chest compressions as your memory serves, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and play it forward. Pause. Did you see my client in that photo? In that clip?
No, sir.
You didn't see her?
Oh, no, I did see her, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see her on right now.
Right. She just walked off frame, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and play it forward. Stop it. You see my client walk back into the frame?
Yes, sir.
At this point, you were watching firefighter Flamati. He appears to be now providing CPR, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And my client is nowhere near you, correct? At least for this clip.
No, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
And the clip that I just played before, the few seconds that I played before, nowhere near you, correct?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and play it forward. Pause it, please. What do you see happening on the screen from screen right to screen left at this juncture?
We're bringing in the stretcher.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Pause it. Do you see where my client is right now?
Can you back it up 2 seconds? Sorry, I lost
With
view.
the court's permission, I need to ask the
Yes.
court's permission. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and play it. Pause. Did you see my client?
Yes, sir.
Where is she in the frame?
Behind that other individual.
Behind the SUV?
I believe she's in front of the SUV and behind the other individual.
Okay. I meant the SUV, that's the white SUV that's in
Yes, sir.
the far distance.
Yes.
That's the back of the SUV. She's behind it, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Not near you.
No.
Okay. Let's go ahead and play it. Go ahead and pause it. Do you see what firefighter Flamati is still doing throughout this entire clip?
Chest compressions?
Okay, let's go ahead and play it. Pause. What's happening now?
Where Mr. O'Keefe's on the scoop stretcher and he's being transferred to the ambulance stretcher.
So that's the entire time Mr. Flamati, firefighter Flamati, was giving chest compressions It's captured right here on this video, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now Mr. O'Keefe is up on the stretcher, and you are no longer knelt down,
No, sir.
and firefighter Flamati is no longer knelt down,
No, sir.
and you're now following the stretcher with, it looks like, 2 or 3 other EMTs, correct?
I am not in that frame, sir.
Okay, so you've walked away.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go ahead and play it forward. Pause it. You see where my client is?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and play it. Do you see firefighter Flamati or firefighter Kelly continuing to give chest compressions?
Yes, sir.
Which one is that? Do you know?
I believe it's firefighter Flamati.
Flamati?
I believe so.
Okay, so he's still doing all the chest compressions from start to finish?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's happening right now?
Now we are transferring to ambulance 1.
And where's my client?
Right front and center.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
We can mobilize that. If I may have just a second. With regard, just a couple of more questions with the court's permission.
Okay.
I'm going to change gears with regard to what you talked about on direct examination, the hypothermic conditions. You're not a medical doctor, correct?
No, sir.
You don't diagnose patients?
Sir.
You're not diagnosing that John O'Keefe suffered from hypothermia that night?
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Can you follow up, Mr. Brown?
Please. Firefighter Nuttall, the video the defense just showed you, did you notice any differences between that video and when I showed it to you, and that it doesn't have the time on it?
Yes, those were 2 different time frames on that video.
And when we spoke about when the defendant said to you, I hit him, that wasn't shown to you in that video just now, was it?
No, it was not.
So if we go back, will you be able to explain where you came from and firefighter Flamati came from and when you first went over to John O'Keefe?
Sure.
With the court's permission, Ms. Gilman, if you could start that video. I think it is 6:11, please. Now stop it there. Do you see that this exhibit has timestamp on the top?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please continue. Could you stop, please? Do you see the red lights on the left?
Yes, sir.
Is that when you believe that you first arrived?
Yes, sir.
And that note says 6:11:05. Could you continue, please, Ms. Gilman? Please watch to the left. Stop, please. Is that when you first arrived and walk over to help John O'Keefe?
Yes, sir. That's me.
I'll note that the timestamp is 6:11:21. Okay. Continue, please. Stop, please. Did you see firefighter Flamati come after you?
Yes, sir.
Was any of this shown to you during those questions?
No, sir.
No. Continue, please. Stop, please. Okay. Do you see the defendant in that screen?
Yes, sir.
Do you see her moving from right to left towards you?
Sustained as to the form.
Okay. What direction do you see her running in that screen from right to left?
She's running towards where the three of us are grouped.
Okay. Please continue. Stop, please. Is it at that time the defendant said to you that she hit him?
Yes, sir.
And you remember that?
I do.
Okay. I'm done with the tape. Thank you very much. Now, you were asked questions about your memory.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you were asked the questions about Trooper Proctor, when you were saying that you didn't remember, were you referring to the conversation with Trooper Proctor, or were you suggesting you didn't remember what happened that morning?
I don't remember the interview with Trooper Proctor. I remember it happened. I don't remember the substance of what was discussed entirely. I remember we discussed that morning, but...
Do you know if that conversation was recorded or just a conversation between you and the trooper?
I do not know if it was recorded.
You asked questions. I want to ask you about questions on Mr. O'Keefe, and you mentioned that there was some type of blood clotting on the back of his head?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You noticed there were abrasions on his right arm?
Yes, sir.
You noticed there was a hematoma on the right side of his head?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any bruising on his right knee?
Don't recall, sir.
Did it stand out to you that all of his injuries, all of them that you saw other than the cut on the back of the head, that they were all on his right side?
Yes, sir.
Did you notice any hematomas on his left side?
I did not.
Did you notice any scratches or abrasions on his left side?
I did not.
Did you notice any marks that would be consistent with an altercation on the left side of his body?
I did not.
You were asked about the cause, and you said that you don't know the cause. You weren't there, were you?
No, sir.
You asked if it was consistent with being punched, and you said it could be.
Yes, sir.
Could it be consistent with being clipped by a car?
Objection.
Sustained as to the form.
You were asked questions about clothing,
Yes, sir.
and you had at one point said you thought that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing a winter jacket. Do you have any memory that when you first got there, or when you first got there, do you have any memory whether there were any towels wrapped around Mr. O'Keefe's head?
I remember there was a white cloth of some sort on the scene.
Okay. And when you were asked about your memory regarding the clothing, was the clothing of what was utmost importance to you at that time?
No, sir.
And why is that?
I was, again, focused on Mr. O'Keefe's airway and ventilation.
Okay. And when you were asked about the clothing, do you remember if you added anything else about your certainty or uncertainty about clothing when you previously gave a statement or testimony?
I believe when I testified last year, I did note I had no part in removing any articles of clothing or anything like that. That was not my job in the back of the truck.
Do you remember any recognition of the fact whether you were certain or not about clothing?
Repeat the question, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, is there anything that would refresh your memory about what you had said about clothing?
Objection.
Ask a different question first.
You had mentioned that you had some difficulty about clothing. Do you remember what you had previously said?
I remember there was some difficulty of getting the individual's fingers through clothing just because they were so cold. They were difficult to manipulate. Just they really was not conducive to getting clothing off easily.
Okay. You met with me 3 times?
Yes, sir.
I had not met you before any of your prior testimonies, had I?
No, sir.
Do you remember meeting with me and discussing this case with me?
I do.
Do you remember me asking you to tell me what you remember?
I do.
Do you remember what I told you about testimony when you come into court?
Yes, sir.
What would I tell you?
I remember we discussed that just tell the truth.
Did I tell you that it doesn't matter? There is no side. Doesn't matter if it helps or hurts. That you just tell the truth.
Sustained.
Did I ever suggest to you that you should stick to a story?
No, sir.
Did I ever suggest to you you should offer your testimony in any certain way?
No, sir.
When I talked to you, did I ever ask you to say anything about your testimony to this jury?
No, sir.
Other than what?
Speak to the jury.
Did I need to tell you to tell the truth?
No, sir.
And in telling the truth, did the defendant say to you, I hit him, I hit him?
I'll allow it.
Yes, sir. 3 times.
And in fact, do you remember, in addition to her saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, when you asked her the question, kneeling down over John O'Keefe's body, do you remember if you ever talked about other times that she said it, not to you?
I do not.
Okay.
The answer is I do not. Next question.
Okay. Do you remember testifying previously in this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember at all discussing whether or not, after she left you, whether or not the defendant was still talking and speaking?
I'm sorry, sir. Repeat the question.
Do you remember, after the defendant left you and made that statement to you, do you remember did you hear her speak to other people after you?
I heard her having conversations in the background, but that was not my focus at that time.
Okay. And during those conversations in the background, did you hear her talk about that same issue again?
I believe she said it several times, but the 3 times she said it to me were what stuck out to me.
Okay. And when she said it to other people, it wasn't directly to you?
No, sir.
Move to strike.
So watch the form of the question, Mr. Bowman.
And when she said it to-
Stating the objection.
When she said it to other people, do you know who she said it to?
I do not.
I'll allow it. So the answer is I do not.
I'm sorry.
Do you remember when she said it other times who she said it to?
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for this.
Sir, after the defendant came over to you and spoke and then left, do you remember hearing her make further statements?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember her making further statements similar
I do.
to the statement to you?
Yes, sir.
Could you share with the jury what you remember her saying, not to you, but after she left you?
I remember hearing I hit him several other times. Again, not directed to me, just kind of off in the background. I'd like to reiterate, we were really focused on the patient at that point. We were trying to provide care.
Thank you, sir.
So now, after Mr. Brennan asks you a few questions, now you remember her saying, I hit him a bunch more times. Correct?
I remember hearing it in the background several other times.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Never mentioned that on direct examination, did you?
I don't remember being asked about it, sir. I remember saying what was asked to me.
You were asked, did you ever hear the defendant, Ms. Reed, say anything about I hit him? And your answer was, she said to me, in answer to my question, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him 3 times, and that's it.
To me.
You didn't clarify that, oh my gosh, she's running around like a chicken with her head cut off, screaming I hit him to everybody else under the sun.
It was, again, it was behind me in the background
Right.
as I was providing patient care. Again, that was not my focus.
Okay, so you didn't really hear her say anything in the background, because you weren't focused on that, right?
I remember hearing a generalized commotion in the background, but again, that was not our focus.
So generalized commotion is very different than hearing her say, I hit him to other people. Correct? You'd agree with that?
Yes, sir.
So what you actually heard was the chaos and the commotion of a chaotic scene, correct? In the background.
In the background.
As you focused on your patient care, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, not specific words coming out of my client's mouth, correct?
To the question that I posed, do you know him?
You're right. We're off that question.
Okay.
That question, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Triple I hitters.
Correct.
But with regard to what Mr. Brennan just asked you, the generalized commotion, to use your phrase, in the background, you didn't hear any specific words coming out of my client's mouth, did you?
I heard I hit him. But again, it was in the background and it was not my focus.
Well, why didn't you say that on direct? That's kind of an important point. That's why you're here.
Again, if it was neglected on my part, it was not intentional.
Not intentional to neglect that part for the jurors on direct examination.
No, sir.
Certainly not intentional to neglect that part of your testimony on cross-examination.
No, sir.
But you decided to bring it up on on recross examination when Mr. Brennan is asking you questions again, correct?
It was asked of me. Yes,
And
sir.
it was after, of course, that your new statement that you've never testified to before, ever, is this generalized commotion included a bunch of I hit hims in the background, correct?
Sir.
And that comes after you saw the video that clearly shows that when you described having heard this statement, my client was nowhere around you, correct?
That segment of the video that you showed me,
Yes.
that was not the time frame in which she said that to me.
Well, that was the time frame when Flamati was giving CPR, correct?
He was doing CPR down prior to that as well.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Well, you just testified that you saw him standing up in a big yellow jacket and then kneel down and start giving CPR. We just watched that video. Correct?
But again, the clip of the video that you showed me,
Right.
that was not the segment in which he said that to me.
Well, that's what you're saying now, but what I'm asking is, you described a very distinctive scene, a very, very specific scene.
Yes, sir. I remember it vividly.
She said that I hit him phrase when Flamati was down giving CPR, and you were kneeling down giving airway support, and he was doing rhythmic CPR chest compression.
Yes, sir. That's what happened.
And then I showed you that very scene, didn't I?
Yes, you showed me that clip prior to that.
I showed you the very scene that you described where Flamati gets down and starts chest compressions and never stops until the gurney is taken off the frame of the camera to the audience. Isn't that what I showed you?
That is
Sorry, I didn't catch you on the question. Can you do it again?
Sure. I don't know if I can do it again. I showed you the scene where firefighter Flamati gets down on his knees, begins chest compressions, and never stops until that gurney is taken off camera, off frame, into the ambulance. That's the clip I showed you, correct?
That is the clip you showed me.
And that's exactly when you described your vivid memory from 3.5 years ago. That's exactly the scene that you described when my client supposedly said, I hit him to you, correct?
Again, the clip that you showed me, that was not when it was said. That segment that you showed, that was not when it was said. It was said prior to that, when the three of us were together.
So Flamati was not giving chest compressions then?
He was. The CPR was a continuous effort throughout the resuscitation.
But we saw him start it. Firefighter Nuttall, we saw him start it. We saw him walk into the frame, kneel down, and begin the chest compressions, didn't we?
We did.
And at no point, at that time or after, did my client even approach you, did she, in that clip?
She did.
What?
Objection.
Just a question.
Sure,
Mr. Johnson.
sure. Do you need to see that clip again?
Yes, please.
We're not going to show the video again. We've seen 2 videos. Which one is marked?
The
The
Commonwealth.
one with the timestamp in
Right.
the top?
It's the exact same video. One has timestamp, one doesn't. Just to be clear, you described a very detailed scene in which firefighter Flamati got down on the ground on his knees and began CPR.
Yes, sir.
We saw a clip that it played fully through.
Mm-hmm.
Starts and stops, but it played fully through. Correct?
Yes, sir.
That was true and accurate video of what happened that day,
Yes, sir.
that morning, correct?
Correct.
And from the time firefighter Flamati began his CPR, he never stopped. Went all the way through until the gurney was taken off the camera, correct?
Correct.
You also described very clearly, before you saw the video, that the time when my client walked over and you had this dialogue and you heard this statement, it was during the time that firefighter Flamati is given the CPR, correct? You described it.
Yes, sir.
But when we actually see firefighter Flamati giving the CPR, as per your description, at no time did my client walk over and have a conversation with you, did she? In that video?
She did in the video.
In the portion that Mr. Brennan played you, was firefighter Flamati giving CPR at that point?
As I said previously
Was
as well.
he or was he not? Yes or no?
Objection.
I'm going to let the witness answer the question.
Firefighters Kelly and Flamati were trading off CPR. Tony started doing CPR, and it was passed off at one point to Firefighter Kelly. Firefighter Kelly at that time was a BLS EMT. Firefighter Flamati was a paramedic. They're going to move towards Firefighter Kelly performing CPR because at that time his skill set was not as advanced as Firefighter Flamati's, as Tony's. But they did switch off. That is a routine cardiac arrest. We switch off compressions.
But the video that Mr. Brennan showed you was earlier in time, a few seconds or a minute or two earlier.
Yes, sir.
You'd agree with that, correct?
I would.
And firefighter Flamati had not begun CPR, had he?
I don't believe so.
That's right. He hadn't. But that's the time that my client walked over your general area, correct?
Correct.
Before CPR was started, correct?
CPR was started immediately, sir.
Can we wrap this up?
I don't know if we can, Judge.
Give you a couple more minutes.
Do you understand the confusion?
Objection.
Sustained.
All right, a couple more questions on this. The video that Mr. Brennan showed you,
Yes, sir.
and you pointed to and said, oh, that's the time when she walked over and said the statement.
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
I do.
Firefighter Flamati was not even kneeling down giving CPR, was he at that point?
No,
The answer is yes or no?
no.
Okay, he was not. Later, as the video continues to run, at some point, we see firefighter Flamati enter the screen, kneel down in that bright, reflective yellow jacket, and begin CPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had previously said that when you heard the statement and she walked over to you, it was when firefighter Flamati was giving CPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at no point, you'll agree with me, we just played the video, at no point after he started giving CPR did my client come anywhere near you. Isn't that what the video showed?
That was the segment that you showed me.
You indicated on redirect, that Mr. O'Keefe did not have any injuries to the left side of his body.
Not that I recall.
Isn't it true that in addition to the egg on the right side of his head, he also had a black eye on the left side?
I remember that the swelling had started to, it's referred to kind of as raccoon eyes. It's a bruising of both eyes.
Do you remember
battle signs.
Do you remember saying, in answer to the question, did it look like, in addition to the egg on the right side of his head in the front, did he also have a black eye on the left side? Your answer is, if memory serves correct, yes.
Yes, sir.
So it's not true that he didn't have any injuries on the left side of his body or face, correct?
That swelling kind of migrates over time to both sides. That is a common occurrence for both eyes to be swollen.
Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
He did not.
Did he have a black left eye?
Yes, he did.
Would you consider a black eye an injury?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you the question again then. Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. One last question. You indicated that it was a chaotic scene outside on that front yard.
Yes, sir.
Fire engines, ambulances, patrol vehicles, engines running, diesel engines, flashing lights, people screaming, people talking over the howling wind, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see the homeowner come out the front door?
I don't recall.
You don't recall, or he didn't?
I have no idea who the homeowner is.
And you never saw anybody come out the front of the house?
No, sir.
That's all I have.
One issue. Briefly.
I want to see counsel at sidebar.
Sir, in Mr. Jackson's questions, he asked if you had ever said that you heard the defendant say, "I hit him," separate from when she approached you. Do you remember previously testifying that you heard her saying, "I hit him in the background," separately from you?
Yes, sir.
And you remember testifying that before under oath
Yes, sir.
in court?
I do.
Anything, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, just a second, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may?
Yes.
Just a quick question, Firefighter Nuttall. When you were asked to recite your memory of that day on February 8th, 2022, just 10 days after this incident, did you ever say that you heard in the background, "I hit him" over and over again?
I don't recall.
All right.
When you testified at the grand jury, last question, when you testified at the grand jury, did you ever say that?
I don't recall.
But again, your memory is better now than it was then. Right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Firefighter Nuttall, you are all set.
Thank you, ma'am.